The persistent knock interrupted my morning coffee ritual, signaling urgency rather than patience. Guests weren't on my agenda, not after such a grueling week. Setting down my mug, I made my way to the door, exhaling slowly, then faced an unexpected sight. It was Ashley, my husband's recent girlfriend, who boldly replaced me in his life, and who he proudly displayed publicly while I dealt with the remnants of our shattered life. A grin spread across her face, her voice laced with smugness. "Sarah, start packing. We're moving in." She held a folded document with triumph in her eyes. "Mark didn't mention," she added with a smirk, "the house is his now, so I'd start boxing up if I were you. We're taking over." A chill spread through me, not of anger or panic, but of something calmer. I returned her smile because I was not truly alone. Standing behind her out of sight was my lawyer, and I knew something she hadn't guessed. This began months ago, or perhaps years in truth. 12 years of marriage with Mark transformed me into a wife who kept everything in check, organizing finances, ensuring mortgage payments, maintaining the effort even as Mark drifted away. I had disregarded the telltale signs initially: late-night jobs, a phone glued to his hand, hushed conversations. It was during the supposed girls' night out, a reprieve from trying to sustain our marriage, that fate unveiled the truth. There he was with her, his hand resting casually on hers, their laughter an unfamiliar sound that once filled our moments. Something broke within me then, but I withheld confrontation. Instead, I went home and started plotting, for Mark underestimated me if he thought he could undermine and erase me without consequence. Ashley grinned wider, mistaking my silence for shock. "I know this is difficult for you, Sarah," she continued, feigning sympathy as she tucked the document under her arm, "but Mark and I are in love. It's time to move on." Her manicured hand landed on the doorframe, as though marking her territory, indulging in victory. I nearly laughed, but chose a different tactic, taking a step back to invite her inside. A prize flickered through her raised eyebrows. She hadn't anticipated that. Stepping in cautiously, her heels clicked on the hardwood floors of the house I designed, the home nurtured with years of my life, struggles and triumphs. I lawyer entered silently behind her, poised yet alert. As I closed the door, I faced Ashley. "There's something you should know," I said smoothly. Her smirk wavered as my lawyer finally stepped forward, his mere presence altering the dynamic. Her bravado waned as realization slowly set in. "What is this?" she questioned, her voice less steady. I inhaled slowly before replying. "You seem so confident, Ashley," I noted, assessing her. "Like you own this house, like you and Mark have outmaneuvered me." Her grip tightened on the paper, her stance subtly shifting, revealing her doubt, but clinging to her misplaced confidence. "Mark transferred ownership," she insisted, brandishing the document. "He said you couldn't do anything. It's his now, we verified." I glanced at my lawyer, who calmly perused his files, then turned towards Ashley. "Did you really?" With a composed demeanor, he adjusted his glasses and addressed me, "Mrs. Harrison." I glanced back at Ashley, noting how her confidence was finally starting to shake. "Would you like to explain, or shall I?" I asked. "Go ahead," I said. "I think she should hear it from a professional." My lawyer cleared his throat. His gaze was fixed on Ashley, who clung to the papers as if they were her lifeline. "You see, Miss Ashley, correct?" Without waiting for her response, he continued. "The house was never Mark's to give away." Silence hung in the air as Ashley blinked, confused. "This house," my lawyer said, gesturing around, "was never under Mark's name. Not before, not during the divorce proceedings, and certainly not now." Ashley's face paled, but she managed to shake her head defiantly. "That's not true," she scoffed. "Mark told me." "Mark lied," I interjected. She opened her mouth, but no words followed. I walked to the side table near the entrance, picking up a different set of papers, the real documents. Holding them between my fingers, I said calmly, "This house was mine before I even met Mark. I inherited it through my grandmother's will. Mark never appeared on the deed, despite his numerous requests. He held no legal claim during our marriage, and he certainly has none now." Ashley's lips parted, but she remained silent. I stepped closer. "Whatever paperwork he gave you, whatever promises he made, they're worthless." Silence stretched between us until realization dawned on her face, her smugness shifting to confusion, then doubt, and finally panic. "Mark always underestimated me." I recalled his laughter when I insisted on separate finances. "Why does it matter? We're married. What's mine is yours," he would say, but he never believed it. What was mine was his, and what was his remained his alone. I noticed early how he casually withdrew from our joint account without reciprocation. I ignored it then, convincing myself marriage was about trust and compromise. I trusted him, and he bet on my naivety, on me being too emotionally shattered by his betrayal to fight back. But from the day I saw him with her, I quietly fought back. Ashley inhaled shakily, asserting Mark said the house was his, as if convincing herself. He said it was sorted with the lawyers. Lawyer sighed, closing his folder. He did nothing of the sort. He attempted fraudulent filings, which seemed to be what you're holding. Ashley's grip on the papers relaxed slightly. Folding my arms, I let silence speak volumes. Then her restraint snapped. "That bastard," she muttered, her voice trembling with fury. I raised an eyebrow. "Is something wrong, Ashley?" She whirled to face me, nearly making me laugh. "He said this was his house. He was throwing you out so we could move in and start over." I tilted my head. "And you believed him?" Her eyes flashed, but she did not reply. I could see her mind at work, realizing that if Mark lied about this, he might have lied about other things too. Turning to my lawyer, she asked so legally, "He has nothing?" Lawyer adjusted his tie. "That's precisely what I'm saying." Ashley inhaled sharply, tightening her grasp on her phone, calculating her next move. I already knew what she would do: call Mark, demand answers, and realize far too late that she'd tethered her future to a sinking ship. With a slight twitch of amusement on my lips, I thought she was stepping into victory, but it was a lesson Mark learned the hard way. Her hands trembled as she clutched her phone, manicured nails tapping furiously against the screen. I watched, amused, as she scrolled through her contacts, her breath coming in quick, angry bursts. The sudden change in her demeanor was almost amusing. Just moments before, she had stood confidently at my door, certain she was about to move in. Now she was in a frenzy, desperately trying to comprehend how she had been so thoroughly deceived. I leaned against the kitchen counter, observing as the situation unfolded. She dialed the number, and after a ring or two, Mark's voice came through, carefree and self-assured, completely oblivious to the chaos on Ashley's end. Without hesitation, she unleashed her fury. "You deceitful, worthless fool! You convinced me the house was yours, that we were moving in, and that Sarah was out of the picture." The silence that followed suggested Mark was taken aback. "A what?" Ashley, her eyes ablaze, turned to me demanding confirmation. I smirked, taking a deliberate sip of my coffee. "Hey Mark," I began, "quite a day we're having, isn't it?" Another pause, longer now, and Mark's confidence faltered as he asked, "What's happening?" Ashley's voice shook with anger. "I'll tell you what's happening. I showed up at Sarah's house, ready to move in because you assured me everything was settled. But guess what? Sarah still owns it." I imagined Mark's panic on the other end. "That's not possible," he stammered. "I filed the paperwork." Ashley cut him off. "You filed nothing. You lied about everything, about us being set after the divorce and starting anew." Mark's breathing was labored, realizing too late that his grand plan had crumbled, while I savored the chaos. "You don't understand," he began, rapidly speaking. "I was going to fix it." Ashley scoffed. "Fix it? You swore there was nothing to worry about, that you'd gotten everything in the divorce." I raised an eyebrow, mocking. "Everything? Oh, Mark, what a misguided belief." I decided to clarify. "Mark, you didn't get the house nor the business, not even the account you claimed to drain. All you got was your car." Ashley snapped back. "And that car a decade-old sedan at best." Mark was silent again, while Ashley let out a bitter laugh. "Oh my God, you truly have nothing." Her realization that Mark wasn't who she thought flickered in her eyes, dangerous and wild. "I left everything for you," she hissed, voice breaking. "I trusted you." Despite Mark's attempts to regain control, she cut him off. "Don't you baby me. You promised a new life, and now you're saying it's all gone?" She was unraveling quickly, and I saw no reason to intervene. Leaning back, I watched, entertained, as the drama continued. "Ashley, come on, we're in this together," Mark pleaded. Ashley retorted with a cold laugh. "No, Mark. You dragged me into your disaster. I never agreed to be broke and homeless with you." Her wild eyes met mine. "You planned this," she accused. "You wanted me to find out like this." I shrugged. "I didn't force you to come here uninvited." She had no response to that. The reality of Mark's deceit washed over her. With fury and humiliation, she returned to the call. "I should have known you didn't love me," she seethed. "You just needed someone gullible for your little charade." Panic strained Mark's voice. "Ashley, please." But the call ended abruptly. She turned to me, a mix of rage and regret on her face. In the silence, unexpectedly, she laughed a harsh, bitter sound. "I can't believe I fell for him," she exhaled, defeated, rubbing her face before simply turning and walking away. Watching Ashley walk away, I pondered what her future might hold. Would she hastily return to Mark and attempt to reclaim some dignity, or make a wise decision and forego any remaining ties? Regardless, it was of no consequence to me. Mark had lost, and for the first time in ages, victory was mine. Ashley's footsteps echoed along the driveway, her grip firm on the phone clutched in her trembling hand. She arrived anticipating the beginning of a new chapter, but instead encountered a stark reality check. I felt no urge to call after her or pity her choice. She had to live with her decisions now. Turning back to my lawyer, who remained unfazed, flipping through his notes, as if a woman's life hadn't just unraveled before us, I let out a light laugh. "She really believed she had it all," I whispered. My lawyer smirked. "That's the result when people trust the wrong person." Closing the door, I symbolically locked away past grievances, indulging in my now cold coffee before the phone buzzed again. Mark was calling. For a moment I hesitated, weighing the impulse to ignore him against curiosity. Curiosity won. "What do you want, Mark?" I asked, disguising any hint of interest. His voice revealed frustration and panic. "Sarah, whatever you told Ashley, fix it. She called, accusing me of ruining her life." I couldn't help smiling, stirring my coffee. "Mark, you managed that on your own." After a pause, he shifted tone. "Let's talk. We don't need this conflict. We shared 12 years, Sarah. You can't just discard me." His words' irony nearly made me laugh. "But you could discard me, drain our accounts, and move on with a younger model." "That's different," he snapped. "I made mistakes, but I was hurt too. We weren't happy." Silence settled again before I asked, "Are you happy now, Mark?" Deep down, the answer was evident. Before the call could end, I added one final thing. "Mark," I said lightly, "my lawyer called today." I let it sink in. The judge dismissed her petition to revisit the divorce settlement. This revelation transitioned his frustration to rage. "This isn't fair, Sarah. You orchestrated this," he accused. Remaining calm, I said, "No, Mark, I just paid attention." Then I ended the call. I assumed it was my last interaction with Mark, but 2 days later, Ashley stood at my door. This time devoid of arrogance. She appeared defeated. Her usually perfect makeup was smudged, and her once immaculate blonde hair was now disheveled. I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "Ashley," I greeted neutrally, "what do you want?" She hesitated, shifting her stance and looking up sheepishly before delivering the unexpected, an apology. "I was foolish," she confessed, her voice breaking. "I believed his lies about you being unsupportive and controlling. I thought I was different, protected from his betrayal." I stayed silent, allowing her to continue. "But you were right. He used me, squandered my money, and maxed out my cards. When I asked for help with rent, he accused me of holding him back." Her eyes welled with unshed tears. Ashley had become a reflection of my past. I sighed, scrutinizing her intently. "So what's next? Are you going back to him?" She shook her head, laughing derisively. "No, I'm done." She paused. I just wanted to say. I observed her silently for a while, uncertain if I could forgive her. Yet I comprehended her situation, having once been in her shoes myself. I nodded, took a step back, and wished her well. "Good luck, Ashley." She offered a small summer smile before walking away. That evening, seated in my living room with a glass of wine, I contemplated the recent events. I had anticipated feeling a triumphant sense of revenge when Mark reached his lowest, yet surprisingly, I felt indifferent towards him. My victory lay moving forward, crafting a new life for myself, while Mark remained ensnared in his cycle of self-destruction. That was no longer my burden. My attorney's final update revealed Mark's failed attempts to acquire a new credit card and a loan. He was floundering, but I was not his rescue. I raised my glass privately, murmuring, "Good luck, Mark," and in doing so, I forever closed the chapter. The morning air was crisp and still as I entered my boutique, the small store that once had been Mark's subject of ridicule. The soft chime of the bell over the door provided a serene backdrop to a newfound peace, free of legal conflicts and my ex's harrowing calls. The shadows of the past no longer loomed, and I had triumphed, not through anger or resentment, but by thriving. I had outgrown Mark, and that realization was the most satisfying of all. In the weeks following our final conversation, Mark's plea for me to mend things, I hadn't heard a word from him. I presumed he had given up. But then a message arrived, a plea for help from an unknown number. Recognizing the sender without even opening it, I read Mark's desperate words. "Sarah, I messed up. I know you probably hate me, but I need help. I lost my job and have nowhere to go. Can we just talk, please?" Expecting to be engulfed by fury and resentment, I was instead met with emptiness. Calmly, I deleted the message. That was the end. No more Mark, just my path forward. A week later, Ashley visited my boutique, hesitating at the entrance, apparently uncertain about her welcome. Arms folded, I awaited her approach. Upon gaining composure, she announced, "I got a job." With a raised eyebrow, I queried, "Oh?" "Yes," she confirmed. "It's in marketing, not much, but it's mine." The once self-assured Ashley, who had appeared at my door weeks before, had transformed. I nodded slowly. "Good for you." With a shaky laugh, she confessed honestly, "I don't know how you endured him for so long." I smirked. "Neither do I." She paused again, then ventured, "I know I don't deserve it, but do you think we could be friends?" I pondered everything we both had endured and learned before granting her a slight smile. "Not friends, but perhaps one day." That sufficed for her. She nodded, purchased a scarf, and exited, ready to begin anew. A year later, I encountered him once more at a gas station, of all places. While refueling my vehicle, I spotted him across the way beside an old, decrepit sedan. Different, thinner, weary, somewhat lost, he met my gaze momentarily. In that instant, I knew his thoughts. She got everything, and I have nothing. Yet Mark never understood. My victory wasn't in what I took from him, but in reconstructing myself and safeguarding my future from his grasp of the past. Offering him nothing more than a slight nod, I continued on my journey. That was the last I saw of Mark. In the years since, my boutique expanded to 3 additional locations. I cultivated new friendships and sought new adventures, no longer dwelling on past shadows. Above my office desk hung a framed quote, an eternal testament to my survival. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all, it's moving on. And move on I did.